Good afternoon, and welcome to Supply Chain Now Radio. We are broadcasting live today from the supply chain capital of the East Coast, Atlanta, Georgia. My name is Scott Luton. I'm your host for today's session. Our session today will focus on the world of business intelligence and advanced analytics, which are impacting modern supply chain management in ways never seen before. Our featured presenters today are Luther Brown and David Maddox, both of nVision Global. More about Luther and Dave in just a moment. But as always, we're glad to have you with us here today on Supply Chain Now Radio. So let's tackle our ground rules. First off, all attendees will be on mute as we're looking to optimize the audio experience. Now, with that said, let's make it as interactive as possible. So please do submit your questions via the chat toolbar. We'll answer as many as we have time for at the conclusion of today's webinar. And finally, a PDF of today's presentation and the recording will be sent out in the next few days to each of our registrants. So let's take a minute to recognize our partners for today's session of Supply Chain Now Radio. We are pleased to be hosted today by CSCMP Atlanta Roundtable. The Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals, CSCMP, has been serving the supply chain community since 1963. The organization provides networking, career development, and educational opportunities to help the logistics and supply chain management community. Learn more at cscmp.org. Special thanks to our sponsor as well, Apex Atlanta, which has been serving the Metro Atlanta community since 1964. For those of you new to Apex, it is a leading industry association dedicated to end-to-end supply chain management. Around the world, Apex serves over 45,000 members, with about 650 members here in the Atlanta area. Learn more at apexatlanta.org. So let's share a little more information about our speakers today. Luther Brown is founder and CEO of nVision Global, a leading supply chain technology firm that has been serving companies across the globe for more than 25 years. nVision manages more than $5.2 billion in annual freight spend for customers, auditing and paying invoices across more than 190 countries globally. Luther is a strategic solutions visionary who focuses on process improvement and value addition for every single client. We are also joined today by Dave Maddox, who serves as Senior Vice President, Sales Supply Chain for nVision. Dave brings over 35 years of successful supply chain experience to the table. He also serves as President of the CSCMP Atlanta Roundtable. It is a pleasure to have these two industry leaders join us here today on Supply Chain Now Radio. And with all that said, here is Mr. Luther Brown and Mr. Dave Maddox.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. Before we get started, I'd like to make sure that everybody understands that we're not giving a sales presentation today. The purpose of our presentation today is to talk about data, the value of good data, and some of the pitfalls that are commonly seen with freight invoices that are processed. Every company has data. It's all around. It's in everything that we do. It's captured, stored, and analyzed. Data's there. It's not having the data is not the answer. Your challenge is that the most important thing about data is you must have good, accurate data that you can understand and trust. Webster's has explained or defined data as factual information used as a basis for reasoning, discussion, or for calculations. That's pretty much what it is. It's how you understand it. When you look at a website, you go looking and tracking for something. The tools that are available or that are being used are tracking all of your clicks. They're tracking every time that you go from one page to another. And all of those things are recorded. They're tracked for a purpose. They're to feed the information back to someone on the other end of what you're looking for. What type things that you have clicked on, what pages you've clicked on. Are you looking at similar type products? For example, if you're looking at refrigerators, Are you just looking at any type of refrigerator, or are you being specific? Are you looking at a refrigerator with just a bottom freezer? Are you looking at a particular type of stainless steel refrigerator, something of that nature? I mean, that same information is what's vital in the transportation and the logistics industry. You know, when you're processing data, you're wanting to capture key elements. You're wanting to make sure that you've got complete, accurate origin and destination information. All of the transportation providers' details, you want to make sure that you have all of that stored. Then you want to track the type mode that's used, the service types, and the service levels. All of this information is important when you start doing any type of analysis. You want data information. You want equipment types. So all of this stuff you're putting together, you're trying to make it into a format that you can understand, where items are similar. The like items are stored together so you can understand what you're doing. You want to make sure that you record all of the different charges. You know, you have an invoice that has a total charge on it, but then you've got freight charges, you've got accessorial charges, taxes, customs charges, of course, all the duty. These things that you're trying to identify to make sure that you've got everything that you can see there. You know, the slide that we're showing is giving you some information about all of the steps that you can go through to analyze data, the analysis process, if you will. And we'll go through those individually as we move forward. You know, the information about data, it's who uses it. It's going to have a different perspective. It's how it's used, how people understand it, and obviously you've got different interpretations on the data and what it means to people. If you're looking, for example, if you're talking to someone in the finance department and you ask them that you've got to reduce some particular costs, they're obviously going to look at things that are the highest cost items or the most frequent type cost items to see how they could determine to eliminate those particular charges, definitely reduce them if they can't. But if you talk to somebody in the logistics industry, for example, and you were telling them about reducing costs, that their first objective is going to be, I'm going to look at your highest volume lanes, and I'm going to see if there are items that are being expensed there that shouldn't be, services used that shouldn't be, and I want to try to optimize and consolidate shipments. That would be their approach, because they're looking at data differently. You know, that's one of the things that's interesting about freight invoices. If the finance department processes a freight invoice, they look for totally different data elements than somebody does in the logistics department. The finance department, obviously, to avoid duplicate bills, they want to make sure that the transportation provider information is correct, and they definitely want that freight bill number to be accurate and the charges to be accurate, whether they're audited or not. They want to make sure they keyed accurately. But they could care less about what service it was, whether the charge, well, again, they're not going to audit the charges, so they're just simply going to process that for payment. But they don't care where it originated. They don't care how much it weighed, what type of service you used, as Ed mentioned earlier. They just look for information to make sure that they don't process a duplicate invoice. But when you look at the logistics department, your transportation department, supply chain, that invoice has more data on it than any other single document that you're going to have flowing through the supply chain. And that information is vital if you want to see trends, you want to understand your spend, where your expenses are being allocated. You want to know how much you're shipping in a particular lane, how much you're shipping in a particular service, how much you are shipping by a particular provider. That's all information that a supply chain group, a transportation group would look at. Those are things that help them to negotiate rates to lower their lanes, their costs in those particular lanes. But those are things that will, as we keep going through our presentation, that we'll talk to you about, and hopefully that you'll have some questions later in the presentation that we can answer for you. Dave, tell us some of the best ways for individual companies to go about gathering data, if you don't mind.
Luther, thanks. And so let's take a little bit deeper dive into data and gathering the business intelligence that you need. So as you see here, a SMART analysis, if you will, specific. So you need to be specific in your goal. Well, saving money, great, but what's the specific percentage of savings that you want to have? General goals lead to uncontrollable projects. So you want to make sure that you've got a goal line to be specific on, measurable. These are some key things, but having a goal that's measurable and you can define how you're going to measure your progress. What data are you going to capture or generate that will help you know that you're on the right path to achieving that specific goal? It's got to be attainable. I mean, you can't say that you'll never get to $1,000 total cost while creating a $1,200 product, or run a 5-minute mile. Make sure it's attainable. Make sure that the time frame is realistic. You can't train for a marathon in a week, right? So it's got to be attainable. Relevant. It needs to be relevant. Is the project, does it make sense? If you say you may need to reduce raw materials by 7% over 18 months, that would be a project worth tackling. So just make sure it's relevant and time specific. You got to have a deadline. Projects should not run on and on and on and on forever. I mean, you want to have a good, clear, time specific deadline. So let's talk about data collection. And so kind of breaks down into three main ways: manual, automated, and visual inspection. And then we'll talk about artificial intelligence, which is getting a lot of buzz around today. So manual capture, manual processing, if you will, keying of data into a software such as Excel application or any other program that can accept data. We know those. It's labor intensive. It's time consuming. Businesses find efficiencies in migrating to automated methods to capture the data. So let's talk about some of those automated methods. Well, in our world, in nVision Global, in our freight auditing piece, we have various ways to automate freight invoices. OCR, optical character recognition, is one. ICR, intelligent character recognition, is another. And so we've got various automated ways to be able to capture the data, and I think that's important to have some automated processing that cuts out the labor and speeds the process, if you will. Visual inspection is not recorded into a database, but elevated by the individual looking at the document or image. And then AI. I was at a conference the last few days, and there's a lot of talk about machine learning and artificial intelligence. So it's really the process of creating logic that allows computers and programs to learn as they move forward, whereby identifying customer and market trends and help the future sales planning for companies. So that's a key piece, and it seems to really been taking some momentum in order to drive better use of the data. So it kind of gives you some ideas about data collection and gathering the data. Luther, now that we have that, I think it's maybe time to analyze it.
Thank you, Dave. I would tell you before you start analyzing data, you have to take an approach of understanding what the next steps are. You have to normalize, you have to cleanse data, you have to normalize data, create a standardization in your data before you can even begin, if you want to have a good analysis, because you can analyze data all day long. And I was telling someone the other day, there was a movie, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. Well, you can look at data and you can say it's ugly, it's bad, or it's good. And you can't do an analysis on ugly data or bad data. You're going to get ugly results and you're going to get bad results. The only way you're going to get good results, a good understanding, is having good data that you can trust. Okay? So the first process you want to go through, again, is normalizing your data, cleansing it, normalizing it, getting it set up to where it's useful to you. And there are hundreds of applications on the market that you can look at. Yes, one of the more common tools, obviously, is Excel. Everybody wants to put things into Excel. But again, it's getting something that will allow you to do what you need to do. In our world, we obviously use different analytical tools, and we import and export data in multiple formats, and then we create a lot of different KPIs and so forth. So the analysis is important, but it's got to be based on good quality data. Okay, Dave, if you're taking the next one, please. This is an example, and forgive me, I wanted to show you something, and this is why the normalization, if you will, is important, the standardizing of data. If you look at this sample here, you've got a charge that's destination forwarding. Then you have a charge that's origin forwarding. And then you have a charge of a forwarding fee. Okay? So those are different items, yet they tend to be grouped together. They tend to be called different things from different types of invoices. Instead of it saying, for example, destination forwarding, it's going to say destination freight charges or destined freight charges, and they come in that way. So I wanted to show you this to give you an example, an understanding of the type information that you're going to see. The next one for me, Dave. Example of invoice charges that we tend to receive. You'll see an invoice come in that'll say an airport pickup charge. Someone else is going to call it an origin inland freight charge. The invoice will say it's a local pickup charge or it's origin freight. When you're processing or you're trying to analyze this data, the objective is to take from a large bucket hundreds of different accessorial charges or charge items and put them in smaller buckets, if you will, roll the information up to where you're looking at less line items. Yes, you can do a deep dive into those particular line items if you want, but the objective is to quickly look at something that says, okay, here's my various inland freight charges. Here's how much money I pay for inland freight. Here's my net freight, and here's the type information that I pay for my net freight. My insurance charges and my fuel surcharges. Instead of looking at, for example, the insurance charges, I've got war risk insurance. I've got an insurance surcharge. I've got a liability of carriage charge. If you were looking at an Excel file and you sorted it from A to Z, you would never catch these items because they're not grouped in smaller buckets. They're processed exactly how they come in. Maybe if you show me the next one. This is a similar thing that's on services. You'll take services and not identifying anyone because I can assure you it comes on everybody's bills. It's not a single provider. It's the way that they do business, and it's understandable. What you try to do is you roll these up again into a smaller bucket to where you can look at them. If I wanted to know what I was spending on expedited freight or freight that was for the next day's delivery, etc., I can look at one item, or I can look at 8 or 9 different individual items, and that would be against one particular provider, and they're all the same, I can assure you. Or I can use or do business with 4 or 5 of those providers, and now I'm looking at a list that's 10, 15, or 20 different lines. And I couldn't, it's extremely difficult at that point in time to try to understand how much money you're spending on expedited freight. But then if I wanted to drill into the expedited freight bucket, I've got the more detail if I need it, but at a higher level, I can quickly tell I'm spending X number of dollars on expedited freight. It's this percentage of my overall spend. That's the purpose of normalizing the data and grouping it together. Show me the next one, please, Dave. Obviously, the pitfalls of analyzing data, of course, is if you don't have a process that's in place and you're not using the right tools, then you're going to wind up with looking at what you think is the best thing that you have, and that's just what was processed. The data, it's often looked at that as it's a luxury or it's an expense item, and I can't afford to spend the money to analyze the data. I can't afford to invest in what's necessary to do it. That's an understandable response. We hear it often. I can assure you from experience, if you want to reduce costs, you want to get an understanding and control costs, then you make the investment some way to do that. In past experience, a lot of people, they have their gut feeling of what they're doing, and they have their gut feeling of what their data is going to show them. So they're not really going to change their mind. They're already, based on their experience, what they want to do. The tendency to estimate the probability of an outcome based on how prevalent or familiar the outcome is in one's experience. Again, I've already got my mind set and I know what I'm going to do. You have others that they want to make educated guesses based on experience. Most of those results are going to have a bias. One way or another, they'll be biased. They're not looking at the data in a true, open, objective frame of mind. David, if you'll go next one for me. Thank you, sir. All right, so Dave, from the sales perspective, can you tell me some of the stuff that you would see someone doing?
Well, some of the customer challenges, and we'll go back, but I spending a lot of time with CSCMP and programs that we've had over the last couple of years, and this year it's all about data, digitization of data, and reading a lot of trade magazines such as Supply Chain Quarterly. I get a lot of information, and part of this information that I'd like to share is some of those challenges that are happening today with the customers, with the shippers, if you will, and so these are some of them. And so let's talk about a few of these. So 5% say they have accurate data, and 20% say I have no idea if the data that I've got is accurate. And many of these folks do not have any kind of technology that's helping them be efficient, if you will, with the data, such as a TMS solution, and struggling to define and create that measurable analytic to drive that change, right? And so they need some of those processes. They need some of that automation to be able to create that change. So integration of transportation providers is cumbersome. We hear that. We don't have the IT resources in play to be able, because we're implementing an ERP system, and so the bandwidth that we've got is just not there. And so that's some of the things that we hear as a pushback. And then companies want to better forecast events, but lack of the data or lack of what we talked about today about how do you get it, where do you find it, what do you do with it when you get it, is a concern, and it's a challenge. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the data analytics, and this is this is a slide that that I think somewhat defines it. In a descriptive way, you've got a look in the past. I mean, what happened? And there's a lot of human intervention, if you will. And when you diagnose it, you know, kind of why it happened, you get a little bit more into that descriptive with respect to data analysts that describes and summarizes and makes into an interpretable data point. And they've still got that human input, right? And so now you're into that, what will happen if it's predicted? Understanding more about the future. A little bit more about that AI that I talked about earlier. Its roots are the ability to predict what might happen. Data that provides actionable insights, providing estimates about likelihood of a future outcome, probabilities. And so from that, there's this last step that we feel like is really important with the analytics in your data, and that's that prescriptive part. Now that you've got some prediction, let's let the decision process, let's let the automation process then act upon that. Okay, and so we call that the prescriptive. Many of you may have seen this or heard that, but it really advises on the possible outcomes. So data that prescribes a number of different possible actions in order to guide to a solution. These analytics can quantify the effect of future decisions in order to advise on possible outcomes before the decisions are made to execute. Not just what, but why, and the outcome will happen, providing recommendations to actions. And so we see that this is the process that can help you better use the data. This is something else we kind of created here, your data at work. And so you've got the proof of the concept, and you've created to engage, and now you're going through this process similar way. You've discovered it, you've got the data, you're going through that conception, you've built the KPIs, you've identified, you've got to put planning and management together to design it, and then you're going through that formulation, you're predicting the model, you're developing, and then you got to deploy it. You got to take advantage, you got to deliver, you got to take advantage of that. And so those are some things, some of the challenges and some of the data at work and some of the data analytics that I think can be applied that can help you. So now that we understand how to collect the data, how to analyze the data, and the importance of clean, normalized data, what's next? Where do we go?
Dave, you want me to talk about that one? I
Please.
So. How to move forward? Well, obviously, you want to utilize data and the analytics to help you to reduce costs and to drive growth. You most definitely can follow the SMART project planning method. I don't disagree with that one. I'd like to skip one for a second. The next item is utilizing data scientists. And I've been told it's probably one of the sexiest jobs in the 21st century. I can tell you it's an expensive job or an expensive resource, but and unfortunately, because it's often one of those resources that a mid-sized or small company can't take advantage of. It keeps them at a disadvantage. So I would tell you that, and this is what I'll go back now to the item says investigate and partner with a third party. I would tell you that it's invest with a partner, because I think it's important that you get a good partner. You invest the time that you need, the money that's necessary to do it, but you get a good partner that understands data. They understand data capture. They have analytical tools. It's important to you. In today's market, there are hundreds of, in a domestic market, there are probably thousands of companies that would do freight invoice auditing and payment. In a global market, it's a lot less, but it doesn't matter what matters is when you find a company, for example, that's going to audit your invoices, it's very important that they understand the data. They understand the value of the data. They understand how to normalize the data. Garbage in, garbage out. And I can process, someone can process an invoice exactly how it's presented. And they're going to give you data. If you process 200,000 invoices a year or 800,000 invoices a year, you can say I have big data, but you have big globs of bad data. If it's not normalized, if it's not cleansed, it's useless to you. So you want to find a good partner that understands your data, understands the value of the data, and the things that you're looking for. You want to take, obviously, advantage of opportunities with that large amount of data and use it to your benefit. That's going to help you to evaluate your business needs and so forth. When you find a partner, I would look for a partner that is a technology-driven company, a company that understands technology, that invests in logistics technology, TMS technology, because you can carry it over into multiple aspects of the business, everything being in the same application, same database, if you will. It just helps you in your investment. It helps you to have good information to help you to move forward, to do the things that you need to do. Dave, is there anything else that you would like to talk about, or are we ready to turn it over to Scott?
I think we've covered a deep dive on data and the importance of finding that partner, the importance of how to get it, what to do it when you get it, make sure that you've got specific goals and they're attainable and they're relevant. It can be very complicated. I think one of the key things that you mentioned is that normalization and cleansing of the data. One of the key things that I've seen in some of the dashboards that we provide is how deep it can get, how granular it can get to really help somebody move the needle for them and be able to reduce costs. So I think we've summed it up. We'll let Scott kind of take it from here, and we're sure willing to answer some questions.
Great. Thanks, Luther. Appreciate it, Dave. We've got several questions teed up for you. So, again, to our audience, we welcome your questions. We've got some time here. We're going to take the next 20 minutes or so and do some Q&A. So feel free to submit your questions using the chat toolbar, and I'll pose those to Luther and to Dave. So, hey, first question comes from Christine, and Christine would like you to define data normalization.
Ooh, define data normalization. It's taking and standardizing. I can give you some examples of how I would do it, or what I mean by the process. You're taking, when you're pure normalization. I have an accessorial charge that comes in 3 different ways. I want to normalize that to where if it comes in A, make it Z. If it comes in B, make it Z. If it comes in C, make it Z. So you want to normalize that so when you're looking at it, it's consistent. You can even normalize down to a shipper's name or a consignee's name, street addresses, and so forth, cities. If I have North Reading, Massachusetts, make it come in Reading, Massachusetts, or I want North spelled out instead of in period Reading. That's the type of normalization that I'm talking about. Those are type things that you would do, similar to the accessorial charges and the different charge items that you were talking about. You're taking those different things and trying to normalize them into a different bucket. That's one of the things. That's the standardization that I was talking about, the groupings. But you actually can even normalize down to names, if you will. You see something, for example, J.C. Penney. Is it J period C period, or is it Penny? Okay, how are you going to file it? How are you going to research it? If you're wanting to see information where you're shipping into a particular lane, and in that destination city, it could be spelled 3 or 4 different ways. Well, do you want to look at 3 or 4 different items, or do you want it all normalized into one? That's what I mean by normalization. And I hope I answered that question good enough for you. If not, please let me know.
Terrific. Great question, Christine. Thank you for walking us through that, Luther. Makes a lot of sense on my end. Next question comes from Sam. And Sam asks, what are some of the problems nVision solves for its customers?
Oh, you want me to take that, Dave?
No, I'll take that one. So I think, when we meet with customers and prospects, it's all about the discovery of their business, understanding their pain points. That's an old adage. What's your pain points? What keeps you up at night? But it never goes away, because those are the things that we need to attack. Those are the things that we need to try to pull the data from to be able to assist, right? So applying technology to those pain points where it makes sense. How do we do that? Well, in Vision Global, we do that a few different ways. The visibility of your shipments through the Impact TMS that we have. Creation of an adherence to routing guides. Wow, how important is that? Capacity is tight right now. You're building routing guides. You've got rates in place. You need to get it the first carrier, obviously, to hopefully take care of that load, because that's why you've got it there. Maybe because you want it to be the least carrier, but you've also looked at or least cost carrier, but you've also looked at they've got great service, and now it goes down the line to the second and the tertiary and so forth. So, having that creation of that routing guide. Claims management. Claims management's huge. We do that here. It's all about making sure that you've got the correct information, the rules built to be able to react and execute the claim. To include images as an example. Spot auction and rating. And so if you've got a routing guide and you go all the way through the routing guide, you need the ability to be able to take that out on the market and quickly be able to find capacity at the lowest rate. And so it's twofold, right? You're looking either for capacity or you're looking for the lowest rate. So spot auction is a tool that we provide within our platform, within our Impact TMS, to kind of assist with that and do it quickly, right? You can time it. So you can either have it on a 30-minute or an hour or however long you need to be able to react based on the transit time and the execution of shipment. So those are just a few of the problems that we solve at nVision.
Scott, can I add to that, please?
Please, absolutely.
I would tell you that what are some of the problems? I would approach that this way. We help our customers save money. Our customer, and I can actually proudly say this: there is not a customer that we have or had in our 25 years that has not saved more money than they've invested with us. Okay, but it's listening to what our customers' challenges are, understanding what their challenges are, and then presenting to them a solution that is configured to meet their needs. Everybody's not the same, and you cannot deliver or sell to someone, force something on them that's not what they're looking for. You have to understand what their challenges are, and you have to come up with a process that's going to accommodate their challenges. And that it doesn't matter, again, if you're handling loss and damage cargo claims, if you are handling service audits, or if you're handling TMS solutions or visibility solutions, or just pure old freight audit and payment. It's understanding what your customer's challenge is and customizing configuring a solution for them that takes care of it.
Terrific. Hey, let me ask a follow-up question to that, to really this whole line of questioning. So in today's environment where we have rising costs of transportation, we've got a capacity crunch, for shippers, do you argue that having your data normalized and really knowing what you're looking for, that's what's going to put you in the best shape to find a carrier, find a lane, and get your product moved as quickly and as inexpensively as possible?
I think that a normalized data set is going to give you more accurate information than a data set that's not cleansed or not normalized. Could you do the very same thing without your data being normalized? Yes, you could. Could you do it as fast as a customer that quickly knows, has a handle on their spend, their activity in a particular lane? I don't think you could. It's just a benefit to you.
Okay, terrific. Thank you for that perspective. So next question is going to come from William. And William asks, many times the major problem that I find is that the customer doesn't know the goal. In this case, how can you help the customer find the goal when you are not an expert in this particular business? That's a good question.
I'm not sure I understand what you mean by being an expert in a particular business. I would tell you that an X is a has-been and a spurt's a drip under pressure. So, I'm not sure I want to be classified as an expert. And I would tell you that that's not uncommon. I mean, we see it every day that a customer doesn't understand sometimes, okay, and that's not being critical of customers. It's tunnel vision. They've done it this way over and over, and this is what they're accustomed to. We can be guilty of the same things. I have done something this way, and occasionally it's nice to have fresh eyes looking at something, a different perspective, if you will. We do that frequently. We transfer people around to different departments because it's different perspectives. But I hear often that I want a TMS. TMS is a very broad term. And what I try to do with a customer is that instead of telling me you want a TMS, tell me what you want to accomplish. Because what you want to accomplish, your end result, your goal, may simply be a least cost routing tool. It may simply be a tool to provide you visibility, a visibility portal. It may be a simple tool that would handle your procurement events in an online fashion. In a global environment, that's something that's interesting. In North America, we do RFPs and RFQs, and we tender shipments. In Europe and in Asia, when they do a tender, they're doing a freight tender. It's not tendering a shipment. So, it's interesting the terminology that you find around the globe. But understanding what the customer wants to do, what they're trying to accomplish, helps you to deliver that to them. So I would tell you, listen to them, repeat what you think you're hearing, make sure you understand, and then come up with a solution to allow them to reach what their end result or desired end result is. Dave, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I would. We have many customers that have executed goals that we share with folks. So best practices, if you will, and that kind of helps maybe define or go, oh, you know what, that's something we may be interested in based on what they were able to achieve. It may not have to be on the back end from the shipment side. It may be on the front end. Maybe it's a conversion of pay terms. Maybe it's conversion of prepaid versus collect, compliance. Maybe you don't want to have that pay term change, but you need more visibility of what your vendors are shipping to you, and you want to get them to provide the ASN or go into our web portal to provide that information, so you have the visibility on at the purchase order level, but not at the ship and execution level. So I think it's all about the discovery. I think it's scope questions that a company like us or others have that kind of pulls out that goal, if you will, helps redefine where they want to get to. And then I think as you move along, it could change and could be added to it. That'd be my addition.
Great. Thanks, Luther. Thanks, Dave. Great question, William. Next question. Now, who would have thought that data normalization would get as much attention on this webinar? But our next question is again on data normalization from Anthony. He asks, is data normalization part of the standard agreement with clients, or is it a value-added service for an additional fee?
Good question. Everything, it always deals with understanding a scope of work, if you will. But I would tell you that our objective, our goal, is to deliver to our customers quality data, good data, and we have our process that we've been going through is something that we've put a team in place to normalize data, to understand data. We've been dealing with data scientists, working with them, and we're putting analytics in place and technology in place to improve the process, to automate as much as we can, to identify quickly outliers that have to. In this entire process, there's no way that you can automate everything. There are things that you have to look at. You have to visually see things to understand them, and I don't care if the data is processed in a manual data entry environment, an OCR environment, or an EDI environment. The data is, at some point in time, was created by someone manually. So at some point in time, it could have been fat-fingered. So it doesn't matter, but in this process, you're going to have outliers that require you to look at them. To answer your question, yes, the data normalization, as we fine-tune this process for our customers, will be a part of our standard offering, yes.
Great.
Currently, data cleansing, I'm sorry, Scott, forgive me. Currently, data cleansing, we've been doing data cleansing for about 6 years. Data cleansing is one piece of it. The data normalization is the final piece of it, and that's where it's going. That's the future.
Great. Thank you, Luther.
But actually, go ahead, Scott. I apologize.
No, great question, Anthony. So, Luther, continuing on the cleansing of the data, you mentioned that nVision does cleanse its customers' data. Is that correct?
We've been doing that for about 5 years. We've been into the data normalization process in a test environment for about 10 months now. We're in the final stages. We actually have some in production, and that will be our process going forward, yes.
Okay. So great follow-up question to that. So how does nVision present this cleansed data to its customers then?
The cleansed data, well, obviously you retain the data that comes in. So in your database, you're storing the actual data that was presented to you, and then you have the cleansed data. The cleansed data helps the customer understand what information that they have they're looking at. Okay, it's spellings, for example, of Atlanta, Georgia, and I know we pronounce Atlanta, but it doesn't start with an L. But you have misspellings of cities, so it's normalizing those cities and understanding those what you need to cleanse. Typically, your cleansing deals with data elements such as a city, a state, a country, postal code. That's typically your data cleansing. You can also cleanse addresses and names, but when you do that, you're getting more into a normalization. Now, when you typically do normalization, if you're really looking at the value of data, there's less value in a shipper's name, consignee's name, or street address. There's more value in having my charges normalized, having my services normalized, my modes, cargo types, etc., if you will, normalized, taking those critical data elements and normalizing, again, your city, state, country, postal code. I mean, when a customer wants to know how many containers that I've shipped from Singapore to Tokyo, I can tell you how many containers that you've shipped in that market. Well, I can also tell you how many TEUs, FEUs that you've shipped in that market. I can also tell you the size of the containers that you've shipped in that market. That is value when you want to go to a tender or you want to do a bid, okay? That's the value. That's the importance of a normalized data. It's capturing that information. I mean, if you're going to process and not record the equipment size or not record the equipment type, if you will, okay, so great. You shipped 1,200 containers from Singapore to Tokyo. That's not going to help you as much in a bid as the other information is going to help you. That's part of the normalizing of the data. That's why the data has value. And that, Scott, if I may, that's going back again to having a partner that understands the data, whether it's just your data, but it's understanding the freight invoice data, the value of that data, and having systems that are in place that process that type data. If it's again, you can find a partner that is processing limited data elements, much like an accounting department would, or you can find a partner that is geared more focused towards logistics and transportation and understands the value of that data. Which one do you want?
Terrific. Luther, I appreciate you following up on that question. So in our prep conversations, I get the impression that you're presenting this cleansed, normalized data in customized manners, customized dashboards, reports. Is that correct?
That is correct. We have multiple dashboards, reporting tools that are available, and they're constantly being enhanced. But yes, the information is presented to the customers. The end result is presented to them in various formats, customized reports and dashboards, etc.
Drill down KPIs, etc.
Great.
Yes.
So instead of cookie cutter fashion, they're getting the data that in the form they need it to impact the business positively.
Correct.
So last question here is going to come from Johan. And Johan's he's posing a good question. He asks, using best of breed business intelligence commercial software versus self-developed in-house software? ? So can y'all compare and contrast those two approaches?
Okay. I would probably first ask you to define to me what best of breed technology is, opposed to a customized solution or an in-house solution. We've been in business for 25 years. We've been developing technology for 24 years. I will tell you that you can find a good business intelligence tool, but what you're going to do after you find a good business intelligence tool, You're going to build everything that sits on top of that business intelligence tool. We don't build the engine, but we build everything that sits on top of it. Okay? So you have to have somebody that understands logistics, understands transportation, understands supply chains to create an excellent or a good functional value add business intelligence tool. They're great tools on the market, but again, you've got to sit there and create all of your reports, understand how to write the information that you want, and to bring that information back. So I guess it depends on the individual, which method that you want to take, which approach you want to take. There's nothing wrong with going out there. It's just going to it's just going to require you to do a lot more additional work, if you will, in creating those KPIs and that the end results that you're after. But it can be done that way.
Especially if you've got a complex supply chain and it's ever changing, or you're going through mergers in the future. Your mission is often changing. A canned process can work, but again, you're using whatever the tools are that are there.
Terrific. Well, thank you for your perspective on all of these questions. We had some softballs and some curveballs, didn't we? But appreciate it, Luther Brown and Dave Maddox. On that, we're going to wrap up Q&A and move into concluding today's session. We're going to conclude today's session on a couple of final items here. So first off, we want to invite our audience to join us for one of our upcoming webinars. Just like today's, we've got a lot of great upcoming sessions focused on topics such as omnichannel, reverse logistics, one of my favorites, lip service leadership, lots more. Learn more at apexatlanta.org. Secondly, if you're in the state of Georgia and you want to engage the next generation of supply chain professionals, we'd welcome you to join us for our Supply Chain 101 initiative. We've been taking teams of volunteers into Georgia elementary schools since last November to talk supply chain with third graders and fourth graders and fifth graders. If you want more information, or if you want us to come to a school near you, reach out to us at apexatlanta.org. Finally, don't miss our upcoming workshop in Atlanta with Bo Groover of the Effective Syndicate. He's going to be leading a one-day, very practical, hands-on session on lead the people and manage the process on June 15th in Atlanta. For more information on any of these items, feel free to contact us at EVP for Executive Vice President at apexatlanta.org for additional details. We'll be happy to serve as a resource for you. So, Luther and Dave, before we sign off today, any final thoughts for our audience?
A couple on my side very quickly. I attended the Transparency 18 conference the last few days, and there was some exciting things. And just today, talked about future of data, ability to use different types of data to affect business, quote unquote, using data to provide implications. Every company must be a tech company. Do not be ignorant about technology. There's just some things that really buzzed with me, and I think it correlates to what we're talking about here. Leverage your data across your supply chain. Tracking of your business with speed of data is vital to your success. Speed equals faster decisions, which equals return on investment and execution. That'd be some of what I'd leave. Luther?
Just like a salesman, speed. I can tell you, in my opinion, speed's good. It's important. But it's not near as important as the accuracy of good quality data. You have to have good data. And yes, you do want it quickly, but don't sacrifice the accuracy, the value of the data for speed. I would ask you to focus on the important end of it, which is getting your data cleaned, normalized, and in a format that you can quickly see. One of the things that the objective is, people look at data and say, okay, I want actionable data. I want something to help me make decisions. Well, our objective, our goal, and what we're putting together is I want to tell you what decision you need to make. I want to give you the data in the format in a way that you understand it quickly, and it's obvious to you the decision that you need to make. All you need to do is pull the trigger to make that decision. That's our objective with the data that we're putting together and the way that we're putting together. And Scott, if I may, last thing for me, if anybody wants to contact me, it's Luther Brown, no dot, just Luther Brown at nVisionglobal.com. And you're more than welcome to send me an email on any questions that you have, any follow-up to any questions. It's not a sales pitch. I want to help you. I want you to understand what we're talking about. And if you have any questions, please, you're more than welcome to follow up with me. That would be it for me, Scott.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Luther. Great presentation today. I think no nonsense, hot topic in this area of BI and advanced analytics. To our audience, as we wrap up today, everyone's going to get a copy, PDF copy of today's presentation. You also get a copy of the recording and Luther and Dave's contact information. They're great resources. They're happy to take your calls and your emails and compare notes and serve as resources for you. So I'd like to give a big thanks to our guest speakers, Luther Brown and Dave Maddox with nVision Global, for the presentation and their very helpful expert perspective. We'd also like to thank our partners on this episode again, CSEMP Atlanta, which has got a great golf tournament coming up this Thursday, and Apex Atlanta. We've really enjoyed a lot more collaborative programming over the last year or so, and Dave Maddox's leadership has helped make that happen. Of course, a big thank you to our audience for participating. On behalf of Supply Chain Now Radio, this is Scott Luton concluding today's episode. Have a wonderful week, and we hope to reconnect with you again real soon. Thanks, everyone.